Welcome to Crimson Clues, the podcast where we peel back the layers on some of the darkest mysteries, most chilling cases, and unsettling truth out there. I'm Andy, your guide through the shadowy stories. Here, we dive into the tale that lingers, haunt, and raise questions we may never truly answer. Each episode, we piece together clues, examine every strange detail, and leave no stone unturned. But beware, not everything we find is easy to understand, and sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. So, if you're ready to go down to this rabbit hole with me, let's just get started. In 2019, I was in Seoul, South Korea, on what was supposed to be an unforgettable trip. I made friends, saw new places, and found myself swept up in the excitement of the city that never really sleeps. One night, my Norwegian roommate and I felt a bit bored, decided to go out for drinks, just two friends exploring the nightlife in a foreign city. And after a few drinks, we wanted to keep the night going, maybe find a karaoke room and to end things on a high note. But we didn't know the area very well, especially not at night. While walking, we spotted two guys standing on the street smoking. We figured, why not? They looked local, they might know a good place. When we asked, they were all too eager to tell us there was a spot nearby, a karaoke bar they promised was perfect. But when we arrived, something felt off. The door was this huge metal slab, cold and uninviting, with only a tiny camera staring at us from the handle. It was eerie, like we were being watched. My friend and I looked at each other, both getting a bad feeling, and without saying a word, we turned and bolted out of there. 3 years later, when the Burning Sun scandal broke, my friend reached out. I'll never forget the message. You know that place we almost went to? It was one of the private bars tied to the Burning Sun. My blood ran cold. We almost walked into a nightmare without even realizing it. Today, we're diving into the Burning Sun scandal, a scandal that rocked South Korea's entertainment industry to its core, revealing a hidden world of power, privilege, and abuse lurking just below the surface. This is a story of how one of the world's biggest K-pop idols became embroiled in a case so dark it exposed a side of nightlife no one wanted to believe was real. Imagine you're in Seoul. It's 2019. The light of the city burns bright, flashing neon colors then dance off the towering buildings all around you. You can feel the pulse of the city, can't you? Street bustling, people streaming out of restaurants and karaoke bar, laughter echoing as they spill into the night. Seoul at night feels alive, like a completely different world, doesn't it? And if you've ever been there, you know. It has a certain allure, a pull. It's glamorous, vibrant, exciting, a city where anything feels possible. But that night, that excitement that we felt, it was masking something much darker, something that felt wrong, dangerous. Even I couldn't place it at the time. So there I was in this electric city, visiting South Korea for the first time, and I made a friend. My new roommate, a girl from Norway. She was sweet, adventurous, just like me. And well, you know how it is when you're traveling, right? You want to experience everything the city has to offer. We were two foreigners in one of the world's most buzzing city. And that night we were bored, looking for a bit of fun. Maybe a few drinks and some karaoke to cap off our night. We stepped out onto the streets, the city unfolding around us. But here's the thing, Seoul is big, and we didn't exactly know our way around, especially at night. We wandered, the excitement slowly fading to a feeling of being lost. Then we spotted two men standing by a street corner, smoking, leaning back like they belonged there. We decided, hey, maybe they could help us out. Point us toward a karaoke spot. So we approached them and then were surprisingly friendly, maybe too friendly in retrospect. We asked if they know a place nearby where we could sing. One of the guys flicked his cigarette and nodded. He pointed down a small, dimly lit alleyway. "There's a spot down there," he said, his voice casual. "A little private, but it's nice. A lot of people go there." And here's the thing. Something in his voice made me hesitate. It was a little too smooth, a little too practiced. But we were young, adventurous, and we brushed it off the nagging feeling and decided to go check it out. As we walked down the alley, it got quieter and quieter. The light dimmed. It was like we stepped out of the heartbeat of the city and into a different world, one where the air felt colder. There was no sound of laughter, no music drifting from bars, just the distant hum of the city. And then there it was, the place they told us about. It didn't look like a typical karaoke bar. The door was imposing. It was a huge, heavy metal door with a tiny, almost hidden camera right at the handle. A shiver ran through me. This wasn't the welcoming, open entrance you expect for a lively bar. This was ominous. You know that feeling when your gut tells you to turn back, but you don't really want to believe it? That was me, standing outside that door. I looked at my friend, and I could tell she felt it too. We exchanged a look that said everything without needing a single word. And that was it. We turned and walked away as fast as we could. We never went inside. At that time, we laughed it off, brushed it off, as some strange experience, a weird blip in our night out. But 3 years later, everything changed. But 3 years later, my friend, the same Norwegian girl, called me up. Her voice is shaky, her words stumbling over each other. She said, "Do you remember that night? The night in Seoul? The guys, the bars?" She told me that the place we nearly walked in was one of the exclusive secret bars tied to the Burning Sun scandal. And that got me thinking, there's something chilling about being that close to danger without even realizing it. How one wrong turn, one moment of letting your guard down could have led you into a place where awful things were happening behind closed doors. And that night, I almost walked into it without even knowing. And that, my friends, brings us to the story of the Burning Sun. A club that, on the surface, was just another glitzy hotspot in Seoul. But beneath that glamorous facade, Burning Sun hid something much darker. Something that, once uncovered, will send shockwave through South Korea's entertainment industry. The scandal exposed some of the most chilling abuse of power, privilege, and control in Seoul's nightlife. When we think of glamorous nightclubs, our mind often drifts to images of sparkling lights, expensive bottle of champagne, and the electrifying beats of music reverberating through the air. But behind the glitz and the glam of Seoul's Burning Sun nightclub was something much darker. The nightclub once was a hotspot for celebrities and socialites, would soon become the center of one of South Korea's most devastating scandals. Burning Sun was owned by a group of powerful individuals, but perhaps the most famous was none other than Seungri, a former member of the world-renowned K-pop group Big Bang. Seungri wasn't just an entertainment, he was a business mogul in the making. Despite being a young idol, he had already carved out a niche for himself as an entrepreneur, owning several businesses and clubs. And Burning Sun was his crown jewel, a nightclub that promised the rich and famous everything they desired: luxury, exclusivity, and space where they could indulge in whatever vice they choose. But here's the thing about Seungri. The public didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. Seungri's reputation was built on his charming, playful, and charismatic personality. He was beloved, especially by his fans, who adored his image as a fun-loving, carefree playboy. They had no idea that beneath his persona was a man with connections to some of the most powerful figures in South Korea's entertainment industry, and even in the criminal underworld. But we need to know Sungari wasn't working alone. He was surrounded by key figures who were instrumental in making Burning Sun thrive. One of them was Lee Min-ho, the CEO of the club. He was the one who ran the day-to-day operations, ensuring everything stayed under the radar. But Lee wasn't just a businessman, he was a man with deep connection, particularly in the world of law enforcement. It was rumored that he had ties with local police officers who often turned a blind eye to the club's illegal activities. Lee Min-ho's role in Burning Sun was critical. He was the one who made sure the club was above the law, protecting the club's image, managing security, and ensuring that nothing ever got out of control. He was the man behind the curtain, pulling the strings, while Singari played the role of the charming celebrity. But behind closed doors, the club was a different beast altogether. It wasn't just about selling alcohol or attracting high-profile guests. It was about power. It was about control. And as we would soon learn, it was about using that power to exploit others. But as we will learn today, the story doesn't end with Sungari and Lee Min-ho. Another critical figure in the Burning Sun scandal was Yoon Sok, a former business partner of Sungari. Yoon Sok was involved in multiple enterprises, but his connection to Burning Sun made him a key player. He was also linked to the chatroom scandal, an infamous set of leaked messages that implicated Sungari and other men in arranging sexual services for powerful businessmen and wealthy clients. These men, protected by their influence, believed they could get away with anything, using women as mere commodities in a very twisted game of manipulation and exploitation. One of the most chilling aspects of the Burning Sun operation was the VIP rooms. They weren't just any private space in a nightclub. They were exclusive rooms designed for the high-rolling clientele, powerful businessmen, celebrities, and even politicians. It was in this room that the true depravity of Burning Sun operation took place. Secret cameras were installed in several of the rooms, recording private moments without the knowledge of the women involved. These recordings were shared among the elites, using as currency in a twisted game of blackmail and control. Many of these women who were victimized at the Burning Sun were not aware of what was happening. They thought they were simply attending a luxurious, high-class nightclub, but behind the glossy surface, the club was a front for exploitation, providing women to the highest bidder, manipulating their decisions, and using them for the amusement of those in power. These women were used, filmed, and trafficked, all while the police looked the other way, making them an accomplice in the club's operations. The horror behind Burning Sun wasn't just the action of a few men, it was a reflection of a larger socialite issues in South Korea, a culture of power, wealth, and influence that allows such parties to persist unchecked. Sungari's tie with top celebrity, politicians, and businessmen made it nearly impossible for anyone to question his actions. No one wanted to believe that a young idol with so much to lose could be involved in something so sinister. But the facade couldn't hold forever. As whisper grew louder, and as more victims came forward, the ugly truth began to surface. And when it did, everything came crashing down. The Burning Sun scandal was no longer just a story about a nightclub. It was a scandal that shook the very foundation of South Korea's entertainment industry, revealing how deep the corruption ran. So as much as people wanted to believe that the glamorous world of Burning Sun could continue forever, everything changes in early 2019. What have been whispered about in the shadows for so long, what have been dismissed as rumor, was about to come crashing into the harsh light of reality. So it all started with a brawl. A fight broke out at the Burning Sun nightclub. In the early hours of the morning, A customer has reportedly been harassing a woman in the club, and when he was asked to leave, he didn't take kindly to it. The altercation quickly escalated, and it wasn't just your usual drunken brawl. No, this was different. A police officer who was allegedly a regular at the club was seen protecting the man involved in the fight. And that was it, the spark that set everything in motion. The moment that fight was reported, the police officer's involvement drew suspicion. People started asking, why would an officer protect a man who was clearly in the wrong? Why was law enforcement getting involved at a nightclub in the first place? This was the moment that cracks started appearing in the club's carefully constructed facade. At first, the story seemed like another drunken fight at a nightclub, but soon the fight turned into something much bigger. Word spread about the club's link to high-ranking officers and the entertainment industry. A whistleblower came forward, and for the first time, people started to see the ugly truth behind the club's glitzy exterior. They uncovered hidden cameras installed in the VIP rooms, capturing intimate moments without the consent of the woman involved. They weren't just random accidents, they were systematic. According to reports, these videos weren't just taken for private use. No, they were being distributed, shared among the club's most powerful clients, the wealthy, the influential, and the celebrities. These men have access to something that no one outside their circle could ever imagine, a private, secret world where their power and wealth allow them to prey on others without fear of consequences. But the most shocking part of it all? Sungari, the face of the club, the K-pop idol everyone adored, was the center of it all. His involvement was undeniable. Leaked chat logs showed him and others in his circle arranging for sex services, facilitating the filming of these illicit encounters, and even disgusting way to silence the woman involved. And one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence came from a text message the singer sent to a friend. It was called casual, like he was talking about business transaction, not about people's life being ruined. He didn't seem to care at all. In the message, he made light of the fact that he and his associates were essentially trafficking women, arranging sexual services for powerful men, and keep everything hidden behind a veil of influence and money. Sungari wasn't the only one implicated in the chat logs. He was joined by Jung Jun-young, a well-known singer and actor, whose involvement in the scandal will only deepen the horror. Jung, who had once been beloved by the public, was caught up in this web of exploitation. In the chat rooms, he didn't just participate, he shared explicit video he had secretly filmed with women without their consent. They weren't just personal moments gone wrong, these were crimes. The disgusting behavior of this man was so vast, it seemed like the entire entertainment industry was on it. But even as the messages and evidence mounted, no one seemed to take it seriously. The police, as we know, were often too deeply intertwined with these figures. Many believed that the scandal would be swept under the rug, just like countless other before. The public was starting to demand answers, but Sungari was still a star. Jung Jong-young was still a household name, and Lee Min-ho was still the CEO pulling strings behind the scenes. The system worked for them for a while. But then, something changed. The media, which had often been complicit in protecting these figures, could no longer ignore the flood of accusations. In March 2019, Sungari was officially charged with prostitution mediation, embezzlement, and violating sex trade law. And that was just the beginning. Investigators have barely scratched the surface. As they dug deeper, more victims came forward, women who have been manipulated, blackmailed, and victimized. One by one, survivors told their stories. They explained how they had been invited to Burning Sun with promises of luxury, only to be treated like nothing more than objects for entertainment. Some spoke of being drugged, others being coerced into doing things they didn't want to do. Some had their picture taken or were filmed without their consent. It wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a network of exploitation spanning the city, involving influential men who have the power to destroy lives. And then the wall began to close in. On March 11, 2019, Sungari announced that will be retiring from the entertainment industry after months of intense media pressure and mounting accusations. But his retirement didn't stop the truth from coming out. If anything, it only spurred further investigations. Soon after, Yoon Sok, his business partner, was arrested and the entire network began to unravel. By April 2019, Sungari has officially been indicated, along with several other figures tied to the club, including Jung Jong-young and Lee Min-ho. The scandal had become a full-blown national crisis. For many, it was a shock. How could the idol everyone adored be at the center of such a disturbing crime? How could the club and represented so much wealth and power have been a front for human trafficking, sex crimes, and exploitation? As Sungari's trial began, the full scope of the Burning Sun scandal was still unfolding. The public outrage was palpable, and many people were left questioning everything they thought they knew about the entertainment industry. Was this just the tip of the iceberg? What else was hidden beneath the shiny surface of Korean glamorous night scenes? While the legal process continued, the aftermath of the scandal will leave lasting scars on the people involved and the country as a whole. The once celebrated figures, idols, businessmen, and celebrities has now become pariah, their career and reputation shattered. But more importantly, the women who were victimized will forever be left with the trauma of what they had experienced. So let's talk about the VIP clubs. You know, the kind of place that seem to promise you the world. Glitz, glamour, power. These are the spots where the elite go to play. It's the world of excess, where money flows freely and the rules don't seem to apply. This exclusive nightclub, with their velvet robes, lavish interiors, and private rooms, offer an escape from the realities of every day. But what goes on behind the closed doors of these exclusive venues is something darker. Burning Sun was one of these places, but it wasn't the only one. The club was a part of a larger network of elites venue catering to some of the wealthiest, most powerful men in Korea. And this club weren't just for entertainment. They were for control, for dominance. They were a place where men could indulge in whatever their heart and darkest impulse desires, without consequences. They were a world where money and influence could shield you from any punishment. But at the heart of it all were the women who were often manipulated, blackmailed, and exploited in ways that we, as a public, were never meant to know. So let's just talk about the culture of these VIP clubs, the reality of what goes on when the public eye isn't watching. The VIP rooms are private, but they're not just a place for drinks and dancing. In places like Burning Sun, this room were often the stage for illegal activities. It's not uncommon for this club to be linked to organized crimes, drug trafficking, sex work, and human trafficking. The women involved were often seen as nothing more than commodities brought in for the pleasure of these elite clients. You may all be wondering, how could this happen? How could something so disgusting be allowed to exist, especially in society as modern, as developed as South Korea? Well, the truth is, this club operates under a veil of secrecy. They're not just places to drink and party, they're a space of power. And in these spaces, the people who run them, the VIP clients, they've known that their wealth and status can buy anything, including silence. One of the most chilling aspects of Burning Sun and the similar clubs was how connected these places were to influential figures. We're talking about businessmen, celebrities, and even law enforcement officers who either turned a blind eye or actively participated in this exploitation. The club staff, including the bouncer and manager, were accomplices in making sure the illicit activity were hidden from the public. These staff weren't just there to check IDs or pour drinks, they were often tasked with facilitating the dark side of things, making sure that the high profile clients got what they wanted and that no one got in the way of that. So when you're inside this club, you're not just a customer, you're an elite member of a selected group. However, the women who were invited to this club, often under the disguise of a party or promotions, weren't there for fun. They were seen as tools. And the worst part, many of these women didn't know what they were getting into. At first, they were told they'd be treated like VIPs. Beautiful women offered access to the best part of the club, exclusive drinks, and high-end entertainment. But then, the rules began to change. In this room, the lines between what's consensual and what's not became blurred. The women were offered more than just drinks and attention. They were offered promised things, career in modeling, fame and fortune. But these promises were nothing more than baits, used to trap women into doing things that were never agreed to, things that will haunt them for the rest of their life. Many were forced into situations where their choice was taken away from them. The environment was one of constant manipulation. Women who were invited to the club didn't know the full story. They didn't know that in some of the private rooms, the VIPs were making videos. They didn't know that some of the people they were meeting had cameras hidden in the rooms. And they certainly didn't know that this video will later be shared in secret chat rooms filled with other men who had the power to destroy their lives. So here's the thing about these VIP clubs. It wasn't just about the women. It wasn't just about the sex or the power or the exploitation. No, it was about the control. The power to do whatever you want and get away with it. The power to ruin someone's life without even facing consequences. It's a game of dominance. Men using women to flex their power and wealth. And it's a game that's been going on for much longer than we realized. In the Burning Sun case, this culture of exploitation wasn't just limited to the VIP rooms. It extended into how the entire club operated. The owners didn't just turn a blind eye to these activities. They facilitated them. The staff made sure that certain women were given preference treatment, inviting them to private parties where the rules didn't exist. Those who didn't comply, or worse, those who tried to leave, were either blackmailed or silenced. And if a woman found herself trapped in this world, there was no escape. The sad part is, many of these women were recruited through promises of better opportunities in the entertainment industry. Some were young models or aspiring actresses, eager to get a foot in the door. And once they were inside, the door was closed behind them. They became part of a network of women who were exploited for the enjoyment of powerful men, with their life manipulated in ways they could never have imagined. The scariest part? This wasn't just happening at Burning Sun. This wasn't a one-off. It was a system, a network of VIP clubs all operating under the radar, or exploiting the same powerful structures. When the Burning Sun scandal came to light, it was just the tip of the iceberg. The public was shocked, but many women, still haunted by their own experiences, knew that this was just one example of something much larger, something that had been going on for years. And yet, despite everything coming to light, despite the countless victims who spoke out, many of these clubs continue to exist today. The people behind them are still in power, still untouched, and the women whose lives have been forever alternated by their experiences still carry the scars of what they endured behind the closed doors of those private rooms. The burning question, though, remains: how many more clubs like this exist? How many more women are still out there, preyed upon by these powerful men? And will the cycle of exploitation ever come to an end? Fame. Fame is a double-edged sword. It brings adoration, wealth, influence, but it also carries with it immense power. A power that, in the right hand, can open doors for incredible opportunities. But in the wrong hands, it can shield people from accountability. It can grant them immunity to the consequences of their actions. When the Burning Sun scandal came to light, it wasn't just the atrocities inside the club that shocked the public. It was the fact that so many of the key players involved, celebrities, business moguls, and powerful figures, seemed untouchable. They were untouchable because they wield fame like a weapon, using it to bypass the rules that everyone else had to follow. You see, the scary reality is that fame and privilege can often become a shield that protects the powerful from real consequences. And for those who operate in a world of VIP clubs like Burning Sun, this shield is more than just a luxury. It's an expectation. For people who live their life in the spotlight, everything is at their fingertips: connections, wealth, access. The system is built to protect them. And in the case of Burning Sun, the man who ran it knew exactly how to exploit that system. When you're famous, your actions, good or bad, doesn't always come with the same consequences that someone without the privilege would face. You get to bend the rules. You get to skirt around the law that the average person will be held accountable for. You get to escape. But why? It's simple. Because fame gives you a certain level of power. And in this case, that power extended far beyond just being a recognizable face. It gives this individual the ability to escape that very real ramification of their actions. Take for instance the role of celebrities in the Burning Sun scandals. At the heart of the scandal were individuals who had it all: influence, wealth, and access to the kind of elite circles most people could never dream of entering, and yet many of them use this fame to shield themselves from scrutiny. Take Sungari, for example. He wasn't just a businessman involved in the scandal. He was a member of Big Bang, one of the most famous boy bands in South Korea. His celebrity status wasn't just about his music, it was his brand. He was more than just a famous singer. He was a symbol of wealth, success, and power. He was untouchable. Sungari's fame gave him access to the most exclusive circles in Korea. He had relationships with politicians, law enforcement, and even other high-ranked celebrities. These weren't just friends, they were connections. And when you have connections like these, money and influence, you can do a lot more than the average person could ever dream of. But here's where it gets disturbing. Fame, wealth, and privilege don't just grant you access, they give you the ability to control. In the case of Singari and other involved, they could control the narrative. They could control who got to speak up and who was silenced. They could manipulate the system to their advantage. This isn't just about social influence, it's about system power. And with power comes the ability to silence those who threaten it. The victims who came forward were often dismissed. Their voices were ignored. The women who were exploited in the Burning Sun scandal were faced with a system that didn't want to listen to them. The system was built to protect the people at the top. The powerful were able to make the rules, and when the scandal broke, they used their fame to try and bury the truth. To be honest, it's a classic case of who you know and not what you know. In a world where fame rules all, connection with all the right people make all the differences. Silence is bought and sold in these circles, where those who have the money and power can manipulate what the public sees. And for people like Sungari, their celebrity was a barrier, a shield against the very justice that so richly deserved. Furthermore, the real danger in a situation like this is that the public idolizes these people. Them create a cult of personality that cloud our judgment. We don't want to believe that someone who's so successful, so admired, could be capable of such heinous actions. We don't want to believe that the person we've watched on TV or seen on stage could be involved in something like this, but that's a part of manipulation. Fame and privilege don't just protect the powerful, they make us doubt the truth. This phenomenon isn't just about the Burning Sun scandal, it's about every situation where power and privilege shield people from justice. When the powerful are allowed to get away with their actions, it's perpetuated a system of corruption. It sends a message that some people's lives are worth less than others, that wealth can buy freedom, no matter the cost of the innocents. Think about it. Sungri wasn't just a man with money and power. He was untouchable, and for the longest time it seems like he would get away with it. But behind the celebrity, behind the public persona, were a dark truth that the powerful didn't want to come to light. It wasn't just about Sungri, it was about the entire system that protected him. The same system that protected him also tried to silence the victim. These were women who came forward with their stories, their trauma and their pain, but their stories were ignored. The system's focus on protecting the wealthy, the powerful, and the famous, the one who could afford to hide behind their status, the one who could pay to make it all disappear. But as we know, fame doesn't always last forever, and the truths always come out in the end. The question is, how many more stories like this are out there? How many more people are hiding behind the shield of fame, manipulating the system to protect themselves from consequences? The power of fame and privilege is a dangerous thing. It makes us question what we believe, what we know, and who we trust. But when the mask finally falls, when the truths finally come to light, it's too late for those who were hurt in the process. Let's imagine for a moment the world you live in, your normal, your routine, your comfort zone. Now imagine that everything you thought you knew about that world is shattered in an instant. That what happened when the Burning Sun scandal exploded into the public eye. The cultural ripple effect were massive, and they're still felt to this day. But what does it mean for a society when something this ugly, this disgusting came to light? What does it mean for the victims, for the people who were complicit, and for the rest of us who were left to pick up the pieces? The Burning Sun scandal wasn't just about the crimes that took place inside those walls. It was about what those crimes revealed. What they exposed was the darkest side of South Korean culture, a culture that, for years, had been built on fame, appearance, and a disturbing degree of power. The Burning Sun clubs wasn't just a nightclub. It was a microcosm for everything that have gone wrong within the nation's obsession with celebrity and wealth. In South Korea, celebrities' culture has always been a driven force. The K-pop industry, for example, had created global icons, idolizing stars who are held up as perfect, unattainable image. But behind the glittering facade, behind the stage light and the music videos, there's much more darker reality. The Burning Sun scandal laid bare the way in which fame and power were being abused, and in some cases weaponized to manipulate the most vulnerable. The club itself was a playground for the rich and powerful, a place where they could do whatever they wanted without fear of being caught. It was a place that existed under a veil of exclusivity, but when the scandal broke, the veil was ripped away, exposing something that shocked not just South Korea, but the entire world. Think about this. In a culture that was already obsessed with perfection, with status, with fame, this scandal cut right through the heart of it all. It wasn't just involvement of celebrities like Sungri and the other VIPs, it was the systematic issues of how people in power could exploit the system for their own gain. The fact that so many in position of power were able to protect themselves for so long was a wake-up call, and the shock waves were felt beyond the entertainment industry. It's kind of hard to understand how something this dark could stay hidden for so long. The media for years have played a huge part in building up this image of perfect, immaculate society, a shiny facade that only the elite had access to. And yet, in the aftermath of the Burning Sun scandal, that image crumbled. The culture that had fostered this inequity, this idea that fame and money could buy you immunity, was disrupted, and the public reaction? It was nothing short of fury. People took to the streets. The public, especially younger generations, were demanding accountability. This scandal wasn't just about the victims or the perpetrator. It was about a nation coming to terms with its own hypocrisy. The reality was ugly and the truth was painful, but the people of South Korea were done ignoring it. They were done letting the rich and powerful escape justice. They wanted change. And that demand for change came from the top down. The authorities had no choice but to finally act. The law enforcement, the very system that had protected these powerful men for so long, now found itself under scrutiny. They could no longer turn a blind eye. Investigations were launched, arrests were made, and public trust in the system began to fracture. The public wanted more. They wanted answer, and they wanted justice. Sungari and others were arrested. Sungari, one untouchable, was now facing charges that would forever change his life. But the cultural impact didn't stop there. It wasn't just about the men who were brought to trial. It was about the conversation that scandal ignites. It forced South Korea and the world to look at how they treat the powerful, how we view celebrities, and how we turn a blind eye to the harm that they caused when fame is used as a weapon. The truth was out there, but the fallout wasn't just felt in the court. It was felt in the heart of the public. The aftershock of the Burning Sun scandal still echoes today. For some, it brought about change. New policies were enhanced. There was a renewed push to examine the power dynamic within the entertainment industry. Women's rights groups began to demand strong protection. The public started holding their idols to a higher standard, calling out those who had once been untouchable. But for others, the impact was far more personal. Think about the victims, the women who were exploited, filmed, and trafficked. Many of them never identified publicly. Many of them didn't get the recognition or support they so desperately needed. They were victims of a system that used celebrity as a shield. And now, years later, many of these victims are still fighting for justice. They're still waiting for the day where they're not treated like the afterthought of the scandal. The public's attention has shifted, and yes, their lives remain in the shadows. And as for Sungari and the other involved, their lives are forever alternated. Sungari was sentenced to prison. He was stripped of his career, his wealth, and his freedom. But for some, even that wasn't enough. The system, the culture that allowed this to happen, was far from fixed. The public demanded more, not just for the perpetrator to face justice, but for the culture itself to be held accountable. This scandal wasn't just about a nightclub. It was a reflection of South Korea's obsession with celebrity, with wealth, and with untouchability. It shows the world that just how deep this issue runs. It wasn't just about Sungari's action. It was about the system that allowed him to think he could get away with it. And when the system was broken, it left a hole that's still being filled with conversation about women's rights, abuse of power, and the question of how much we value fame in our society. The question now is, has anything really changed? Will the next generation of celebrity be held to account? Will the system continue to protect the powerful? Or will the scandal finally be the moment where the truth can no longer be swept under the rug? So, as we come to an end for this episode, I can't help but sit back and think about everything we've covered today. The Burning Sun scandal wasn't just about the disgusting abuse that occurred behind closed doors. It was a wake-up call for a whole generation, a culture, and even a society that have been turning a blind eye for far too long. It's shocking, it's painful, but it's also undeniably the truth has come out. And the question now is, what do we do with it? When I first began researching this case, I was stunned by how deep the web went, how much power was involved, and how many people were complicit in keeping the truth hidden. The sense of immunity within the walls of Burning Sun was like nothing I'd ever seen before, and the fact that it took years for the public to even begin to understand what was happening. That's just as disturbing as the crime themselves. But what I think about the most is the victim, the women who were exploited in ways we can barely comprehend. Some of them might never have their voice heard. Some might never receive justice, and it breaks my heart. But what's even harder to swallow is that the realization that this wasn't just a random act of evil. It was a symptom of something much bigger. This wasn't just about a nightclub. This was about a system of entitlement, of fame, of privilege, and of power that allow people to feel like they could do whatever they want without consequences. Now, I'm not saying that every person with fame or privilege is corrupt. Of course not. But the culture that allowed this to thrive, that need to change. Celebrity culture had to be redefined. It shouldn't be about exaggeration. It should be about responsibility. It shouldn't be about untouchability. It should be about accountability. Fame should come with a sense of moral responsibility, not a free pass to hurt others without facing the consequences. What I'm left with after this entire investigation isn't just anger or sadness, but a sense of hope, because change is possible. Public outcry can lead to a real reform. The fact that this scandal became such a cultural milestone means that the conversation has shifted. People are now more aware of how we glorify the rich and famous, how abuse of power is often hidden behind the glittering facade of celebrity. And yes, while it's been difficult to see justice for the victim, there's something to be said for the power that the public now holds. And as for the people involved in the scandal, well, they will have to live with the consequences of their actions. But they're not the only one who had to face the repercussion. We do too. We have to ask ourselves how much we continue to tolerate the people who harm others under the disguise of fame and success. We have to reflect on our own complacency as customers of celebrity culture. Do we blindly worship, or do we hold people accountable for their actions? This scandal reminds us that there's no such thing as being above the law, not even if you're a K-pop star or a rich businessman or a politician. It's a reminder that power, when left unchecked, will always lead to abuse. And it's a warning that our fascination with celebrities need to be examined, because we don't just idolize celebrity, we empower them. We give them the ability to dedicate how we see the world, how we shape our own value, and ultimately how we treat each other. I think one of the most powerful takeaways from the Burning Sun scandal is that it's up to us, the public, the people who consume the content, who follow the celebrities, who buy the products, to demand more. We can't let this just be a pass-by headline. We can't allow the story of the victim to fade in the background. This is the kind of scandal that forces you to take a hard look at society's value, at power, and how far we're willing to go to protect those who hurt others in the name of fame. So, as we close out today's episode, I want you to think about the world we live in. I want you to think about the thing we're allowed, the thing we normalize, and the thing we've been too afraid to confront. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about the Burning Sun scandal, it's about us. It's about how we, as a society, choose to hold the powerful accountable, and how we choose to protect those who are vulnerable. Real change isn't going to come from just talking about it, it's going to come from doing something about it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Crimson Clues. If you were moved by what we've covered today, if you're ready to have those hard conversations, then I encourage you to keep asking questions. Keep holding those in power accountable. And remember, the fight for justice doesn't stop here. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. And that's it for today's case. Here on Crimson Clues, we confront the mysteries that doesn't easily go away. Stories that stay with us, make us wonder what else is out there, lurking in the shadows. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for more cases that keep you up on the edge of your seat. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that could be real.